Hey folks, it's Chad here with Airstream in Greensboro, and I have a question for you. What is the difference between an inverter and a converter? We're going to talk about Airstream power today. I regularly have conversations with folks, especially if you're new to the RV world or new to Airstreams, with power systems with RVs and with Airstreams. And the power system is a little bit different than what we're used to, because predominantly we're used to what's in our house, which is a 120 volt system, and it's alternating current. So you have a device you plug in, it works, and there's not really much thought into how much power you're using or even where that power is coming from. But with an RV, it's a little bit different because RVs are designed to be self-contained, and we have basically three sources of energy in an Airstream or in an RV. And those three sources are going to be 12 volt power, 110 or 120 volt power, and then propane power or propane energy. This propane is a source of energy, and it's definitely a source of energy in your camper. Now with Airstream, especially our modern Airstream, so really let's just say like 2023 and newer, with an Airstream, most of your components are actually going to be 12 volt, which is surprising for a lot of people because they're expecting everything to be 120 volt or 110 volt, depending on how you look at it. But for the most part, we're not thinking 12 volt. We're not thinking battery power, which is what we're referring to when we talk about the 12 volt system. So even things like your TV and modern travel trailers with Airstream, those are going to be 12 volt. Things like your water pump is going to be 12 volt. Your refrigerator is going to be 12 volt power. Essentially everything except for two devices most of the time in your RV will be 12 volt, and that's going to be your air conditioner and your microwave if you have a microwave. And now some Airstreams don't even have a microwave. They'll have a propane oven, and in that case the propane oven is getting its energy source from propane. So that makes things a little bit different when you're thinking about an RV and the way power works. Now, here is where I found to be the biggest misunderstanding of 12 volt power, for instance. 12 volt power comes from your battery. So that's what's powering your 12 volt appliances or your 12 volt devices. 120 volt power, that's coming from your shore power. That's when you're plugged into a pole, you're getting power from that source, or maybe you're plugged into a generator. Or if you have a large enough of a system like on the trade winds, it may be coming through your inverter, which is inverting DC power into AC power. And that's where my question about what is a converter versus an inverter, because your basic Airstream is going to have both an inverter and a converter, and it's going to have a 12 volt system and a 110 volt system as well. So let's look at a few things about that system and how it works today. The first thing we're going to look at is the power box. Let me get you swung around and we'll be looking at the power box. Now this is the power distribution box for my 2020 25-foot Flying Cloud. Now you've got two different sections here. You're going to have on this side your 110, 120 volt alternating current power, and on the right side here you're going to have your DC 12 volt power, and DC standing for direct current. Now everything on this side is being fed from the batteries. Everything on this side is being fed from the power coming off of your shore power. And you can see there's a main breaker here at the top. My camper happens to be a 30 amp breaker, a 30 amp camper, so it's a 30 amp breaker that is feeding the rest of the breakers in this system. Now here is the misconception when it comes to RE power, and that is, where does 12 volt power come from? Some people think, and sorry, our camper is a little messy right now. I'm actually in the middle of a bunch of projects and thought I'd make this video, which totally makes sense. A lot of folks think when they're plugged into shore power, they're getting 12 volt power from shore power, and you're not, because it's alternating current and you need DC power, you need direct current. And so what happens is, and it actually may be a little bit deeper than that. It may be just a misunderstanding of how, that a 12 volt appliance can't necessarily just immediately be able to use AC power, alternating current power. It can't. It has to have some type of converter to step down that voltage to be able to utilize it. Otherwise, it's going to fry it. So in the back of your power box on a standard Airstream, so non-Tradewinds, non-Basecamp XE, the new one that just came out that has a power package on it, you're going to have in your RV something called a converter. And then what the converter is doing is this taking AC power coming off the shore power, and it is converting that to DC power and stepping down the voltage to 12 volt. So the input of that device is 110 volts and the output of that device is 12 volts. And then as far as how much it can handle, so basically how much it can power, is going to be in its amp rating. So most of the time in the past, even if you had a 50 amp shore power connection, your DC power converter would be 30 amp. Or maybe even smaller depending on the manufacturer. Nowadays with Airstream, we have a standard 50 amp converter built into your system, and it's going to be behind the power box somewhere, and it's going to be fed from one of your breakers in your power box. So one of your breakers in your power box is going to be labeled converter, and it's feeding AC power to that converter to create DC power. Now here's the second misconception. That converter isn't powering your DC system, it's charging your batteries. Now you could have a situation where your batteries go bad or you don't have batteries and your 12 volt appliances will turn on. That could be one or two things. It could be that solar is coming in and providing some DC current. It could also mean that the converter is active and providing DC current, but neither one of those sources will be consistent enough to truly provide direct current power to your 12 volt appliances. So what Airstream does is or RV makers do, is they put a battery into the system. Your converter is a multi-stage charger. Its goal is to charge the lithium battery or the AGM battery or the lead acid battery, depending on which one you have. Then we need to set the converter to be to that specific type of battery. It's charging that battery, and your battery is what's really powering your 12 volt system, and it's giving it consistent voltage and consistent power to be able to operate. And so one of the things that have actually happened quite a bit here, even lately, is having customers call and say, hey, my 12 volt power system's not working, but I'm plugged into shore power. And the first question I'm going to ask is, hey, is your battery disconnect on? And they'll say, well, no, it's off because I'm using shore power. And that's just a misunderstanding of how this system works. Even when you're plugged into shore power, your batteries are still powering your 12 volt appliances. Your converter is charging the battery. And similar to with solar, solar is going to charge the battery. It's not actually powering anything in your RV. And that's another misconception with power is, hey, if I get solar, does that mean I can run my air conditioner? Well, no, because the solar isn't powering anything in your camper per se. Its primary job is to charge the batteries, and the batteries are going to power your internal devices. Now, as far as air conditioner, well, you got to have a lot of battery power, and you got to have a fairly good size inverter. And the inverter, now that we're talking about that is inverting DC power to AC power. So its input is coming from the batteries, and its output is going into a 110 volt circuit, depending on your system. It may be a whole house, like the Tradewinds is a whole house inverter, so it's actually feeding the main breaker on the box and feeding all of your breakers that are in that box. Now, most of the time, on most of the Airstreams that are on the market, so outside of Tradewinds and the Basecamp XE, the inverter is only powering specific circuits, and those plugs are going to be labeled inverter, and I can show you what that looks like. So right there, that plug is labeled inverted circuit. And so that's Airstream telling me that, hey, when your inverter is turned on, that plug works, but only that plug, and then the other ones that are labeled in blue with that sticker on it will work off of DC power. And then now you're going to be limited to what that inverter is capable of. Most of your Airstreams, I think 2023 and back, is going to be a 1000 watt inverter, and then 2024 and forward is a 2000 watt inverter, still only powering those specific plugs, but you have 2000 watts. And then most of your newer Airstreams, so 2024 and newer, unless you specify otherwise, is most likely going to have a lithium batteries in it, 200 amp hours lithium batteries. And how long will that last? Well, it really depends on what you're doing with it. If you have every light turned on all day and your refrigerator is on all day, you've got the inverter turned on, they're not going to last very long. But if you're conserving power, you're using natural light instead of artificial light, and it's really only having to power the refrigerator during the day, then it will last a pretty good few days. Like you should be able to get a couple of days, if not more, out of that system, because you'll probably have 300 watts of solar on top. Now, the more solar you have, the longer you'll be able to boondock. And we could do a video, if you think I should do a video just about boondocking and what you need power-wise to be able to go off-grid. Leave a comment down in the description that's you'd like to see a video just about boondocking and how much energy you need stored up to be able to go off-grid. Now, what I'd like to say real quick about the batteries, and then I'll just kind of finish the video. If you're in the engineering world or electronics world, think of the batteries almost like a capacitor. They are storing energy to power other devices, and then they are being constantly fed energy to keep them charged. Now, when we unplug from shore power, they have stored energy in them, and we rate that by amperage. And it's a 12 volt system at 100 amps, or with two batteries, you'd be 200 amp hours. Those batteries are then going to power that system from their stored energy, but we've got to replenish that stored energy as it's being used. And we can use things like solar or a converter plugged into shore power to charge those batteries. But that battery is always powering your 12 volt system. It's not the alternating current coming from your shore power, it's the battery. It's almost acting like a capacitor, providing consistent voltage to your system when you're plugged in. So that's the basics of the Airstream power system. We have a 12 volt system running alongside of a 120 volt or 110 volt system, and those systems actually work together, but they are actually separate at the same time as well. If you have any questions, throw those down in the comments, and I'll try to answer those the best I can, or I'll find the answer. And if you think I should do a video that goes a little bit deeper into boondocking and the amount of energy that you actually need to do some boondocking, well, leave me a comment as well. If you like this video, found it to be useful, please click that like button and the subscribe button as well. Hope you guys live and riveted. We'll see you down the road. Thanks. Bye.